Hello, my name is Ivy Hanley, and in this presentation I will be talking about differentiation and providing a few differentiated notes that can be used in your classrooms. So what and why differentiate? Differentiation is essentially all those different avenues we take to provide the best education for all of our students. We differentiate instruction materials and such for those struggling students to have equal access to education and to meet them where they're at on their educational journey. Simple as that. Yay for notes! So note-taking is a necessary part of most classes in schools. Some students or parents may ask why we require students to take notes. So here's a few simple reasons. We require note-taking because it helps to improve and recall understanding. It ensures active listening. Note-taking requires you to think while you're listening, and note-taking helps make connections between different topics. So here is what differentiated notes are kind of all about. So we differentiate notes to benefit those kiddos who just can't seem to click with the normal ways of teaching. So you have students that can't simply sit and listen to a lecture or a discussion and make connections. There's other students who can't simply read through a section or look at a picture and understand what is the important information. There are many ways that you already differentiate notes in your classrooms. For example, you provide fill-in-the-blank notes, or you provide lists or bullets for students to complete. Super awesome. Keep doing those things. I'm going to share a few examples in the next few slides that may help connect with different students. The first example I'm going to talk about is called the picture pair. This focuses on 2 to 4 major points. So you might be teaching a section or a novel or a chapter or whatever you may be teaching, and you would look at 2 to 4 major points of that section, unit, so on. So students or the teacher are required to draw a picture that will help the students remember the major points. So for example, one major point from a novel you might be teaching might be the central idea of the chapter or of the novel itself. You could do one of two things. You could have the students come up with a central idea and draw a picture, or you could give the central idea and have the student draw the picture that corresponds with the central idea. So here's an actual example. So let's say you were teaching the novel The Giver, and you are breaking it up by chapters. So maybe you just finished reading chapters 1 and 2, and you as the teacher gave the 4 major events, which is noted here on the sheet, the main characters, the big event from those 2 chapters, the central idea of those 2 chapters, and an inference to be made based off of what was read for the next few chapters. So what you see on the slide is the teacher, me, giving the actual events, and I would require the students to draw pictures to make that connection. You could also just give main characters and the students have to list it. The student has to create or come up with a big event. The student has to come up with the central idea, and the student also has to make an inference for the next chapters and draw the pictures. You can decide. These picture pairs are a visual, so it gives students that hard physical evidence that they would need to make those connections, but you could also then assess what connections are being made. So what are, those big events that the students are pulling out of the chapters. This also gives, all the important information on one page, and it helps them recall because it gives them a visual. The next example I have is an objective summary template. So this is perfect for those students who really struggle with those open-ended questions. It provides students with a lot of structure. This can be used for almost any content area. This certain template requires the students to fill in the blanks, and it also provides a word bank. This can easily be scaffolded over time, and I will explain that more on the next slide. So here's the hard copy. I know it's kind of small on the screen, but let me just work with me here. So on this template, the student is required to fill in the blank, and a word bank is provided. And as you might be able to see, each blank gives the specific type of word it's looking for. So the student can fill in the blank with the words given. So the first blank says a text type. The student would then go down to the word bank of the different words for a types of text. So that way they know that's exactly what type of word they need to use. This could be scaffolded over the course of a school year, where this is, as you see on the screen, can be given at first, and then eventually you take away the word bank. And eventually you take away the type of word that is needed to fill in the blank. And then eventually you require the student to write their own summary because they've practiced for so long. The next example I'm going to give is a flower graphic organizer. So this is very similar to a Venn diagram, but it's slightly different. It gives a different perspective and can be utilized across pretty much every content. Here's a few examples, and it will be a more concrete example on the next slide. So an example will be for reading characters, maybe a certain character name in the middle of the flower, and you could give character traits or character quotes in the petals. A math example could be maybe you're working on adding and subtracting fractions. You write that as your title in the middle, and you give some examples and non-examples in the petals. An English example, maybe you're working on independent and dependent clauses. So you write that title in the middle, and you give some examples or non-examples in the petals around it. So here's the actual petal diagram. You would put that title in the middle in the circle, and then you would give different quotes or different examples in the petals surrounding that central middle piece. The last example I'm going to give is either totally completed or semi-completed notes. This is more of an extreme case. So this could look in a couple different fashions. So one, you could provide notes that are completely filled in and require students to maybe highlight those sections that other students would have to write. This could be scaffolded for you to do less as the year progresses. So eventually the student would have to fill in some of those notes like the rest of the students do. Or you could make sure that there is a few words filled in or a few examples written by you, the teacher, beforehand. That way the students have a legible and correct example to work off of and have something to reference when they're studying. It also allows the students to keep up with what you're saying. So they're not trying to work so fast and write so quickly, but then they can't keep up and they don't understand what you're saying, and then they can't understand what they wrote when they go back to study. So with you providing some or all of the notes and examples completed, and them having to go back and only write a few examples or highlighting all of the different things, allows for that student to relax and keep up and truly understand what you're teaching in class. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you have anything at all that I could help with, I could help create, please feel free to ask and contact me. Thank you for listening, and I hope this helped.